The Constitution in no way says there is a right to privacy. The word privacy does not appear in the Constitution at all. But over the years, we've developed at least limited rights of privacy in certain areas of the law. And for the most part, that's because we have this innate belief that we have privacy in some sense. And it, you can trace it all the way back to the idea that a man's home is his castle. And that's kind of our first idea of privacy. You can't just come into my home without my permission. And that's a sense of privacy. There's a sense of privacy that you can't interfere with the conversation that I have with my doctor. That's private. So we have this idea of privacy, and so when certain things infringe on that, we want to respond. And so the courts over the years have found that we do have this fundamental right, and it does need to be protected. And there are areas of the Constitution in which we can see might protect those areas. I think the internet is interesting because it's making us rethink a lot of our laws, and not just in privacy, but in every area of our law. And in some senses we have to step back and say, okay, this is a new technology, but aren't the underlying issues the same? And so when you're talking about privacy online, what you're really talking about is informational privacy. And that is, I'm putting information out into the world, I'm putting personal data out into the world. What are my protections for that? And there are special concerns when we do that online because it's more accessible. The technology allows us to collect a lot more data at once than the offline world does. But the underlying concern is, how is my information protected, whether offline or online? And the reality is the United States hasn't done a lot to protect that information over the years. There is a bill that's kind of in draft form right now, but it's in that draft form where we're going to float it around to everybody and see what people think before we actually introduce it. And it deals specifically with the commercial collection of data, so and particularly with web tracking. So if you go to commercial retail sites online, they track what you put in your shopping cart, what you actually buy from that, how often you look at a page, how long you look at a particular item, this kind of information. The bill really addresses the sharing of personally identifying information, which would be your credit card information, your name, your address, your social security number if you ever have to put that in. And so, although I do think it's going to be introduced, and I do think it'll get a lot of support because this is a very big issue right now and it's gotten a lot of media coverage, I don't think it's going to address all of the issues that consumers are concerned about, because there's a lot of information that we share every day online that's not considered identifying.
Right.
It can be very beneficial, right? I mean, marketers can use this information to come up with a custom profile for me, and so I don't get advertisements online that don't interest me at all. I can get really relevant information. But on the other side of that, we as consumers do have, I believe, a right to control that information, to tell people that we don't want them to track us, to tell people that we don't want them to track certain types of information on us. And I think for the big problem that we have is education, that consumers don't really know this is going on.